Hello, this is Susan Kokinda at LaRouche PAC. Today is June 23rd, 2023. Welcome to the seventh in our series of podcasts exploring the implications of Donald Trump's Agenda 47 proposals, the proposals he intends to implement when he becomes the 47th president of the United States. I'm joined, as usual, by Brian Lance, who will be exploring this with me. Welcome,
Good.
Brian.
Good to be here.
All right. So Donald Trump has been pretty busy over the course of the last week. That is when he's not dodging indictments and arraignments and other things in this world of lawfare. And in fact, this week he launched 3 new initiatives under the banner of his Agenda 47 proposals. We're going to look at one, maybe 2 of those this evening. But I'm happy to report that finally there is beginning to be some attention paid to Agenda 47 outside of the podcasts and the posts, which LaRouche PAC has been doing.
Yeah,
An individual who is very well known to Donald Trump. In fact, he was his personal physician in the White House, and he's currently a congressman from Texas. Ronnie Jackson, I believe he's also a rear admiral. He had an op-ed in Newsweek this week entitled "President Trump Has a Plan to Save America." And he says it's called Agenda 47. And he says it is the most thorough policy initiative to ever be released by a presidential candidate. And he stresses, among other things, that he intends to President Trump will continue his America First trade policies and begin to reestablish our economic independence and sovereignty. I frankly think it's not surprising that no other presidential candidates have put forward any truly comprehensive vision in terms of what it will take to restore our nation as a peaceful and productive sovereign power. Because all of the other candidates, first of all, none of them actually understand the power of the American presidency, let alone actually wanting to use it to defend the average American. I think it's safe to say that all, if maybe most of the other candidates are simply interviewing for the position of being consul general for a global empire. They have no intention of restoring, especially on the Republican side, they have no intention of restoring our sovereignty or restoring our role as a peaceful giant, or certainly no concept of how to rekindle genuine economic growth.
agreed.
Donald Trump does. He's a builder, he's a doer, he's an executive. He has an inherent understanding of how to use the very unique institution of the US presidency. And I want to start with that, Brian, because I think that many Americans and others don't have an appreciation for how very unique the institution of the US presidency is. It's something that our founder, Lyndon LaRouche, spoke of often. So give us a sense of this.
Well, okay, Susan. Well, first I'd emphasize that the president of the United States is elected directly by the American people. You know, it's not within a certain area of the United States. It's not sectional. It's the people speak as a whole. And we saw that in 2016 in an honest election. So far as we know, it was an honest election. And Trump won, and it transformed the nation. And it was the will of the people. And that created the power, the wind behind the sails of the Trump presidency throughout the storms, if you will, the raging storms that he faced. The president, of course, he's the executive. I mean, that's the word that's used in the Constitution. Executive power is invested in the president, and he shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed. faithfully in terms of faithful under the Constitution, not specifically that he's responsible for the legalisms of the law. He has to look at the implications of the law and act accordingly as the executive of the United States, representing all of the people and, our posterity. When we look at the power of the president, we're looking at the power of executive orders. And just if people wonder about that, just think about it. Biden's sanctions supposedly aimed at Russia, wreaked havoc in the U.S. economy. Those were executive orders implemented by Biden and proclamations. But, this was done through executive order. The president has the power to shape existing legislation, pass legislation, fire executives, determine how, in fact, laws are implemented. There's also the powers that Congress has ceded to the presidency. And this is a tariff policy. The Reciprocal Trade Act was of 1934. And this is the one that Trump is citing as the basis upon which he would implement a international tariff, a reciprocal tariff with all countries, all major countries, certainly. Just as an example, there's powers that Congress has ceded to the president. And then there's the implied powers. I guess I already touched on that a bit in terms of the ability to shape existing legislation. And all that's without getting into emergency powers. So the power of the president is great as the man who or the person who fills it. And with Trump, we have somebody coming back in, and he can assemble around himself an institution of the presidency again, something that Lyndon LaRouche emphasized, the role of the institution of the presidency. He's sorted things out a bit. He knows who he can rely on, who he can collaborate with. He can bring them forward, not only in terms of the cabinet, but in terms of an informal, kitchen cabinet, if you will, advisors, drawing on these people in many fields. So it's an extraordinary opportunity.
Well, there's a certain tension when you're talking about this, because over the course of most people's lifetimes who, are watching this, we've had a series of bad presidents. So people sort of flinch at the idea of the powers of the president without recognizing that our founding fathers were very clear, as you said. They wanted the chief executive to be the figure who could represent and act on behalf of all of the people. Because obviously when you have a senator or a congressman, they represent a state, they represent a congressional district. That's how it was constructed. But the president is supposed to be the figure. And in history, when you have a great president like a George Washington or an Abraham Lincoln, you see the extraordinary power of this. Yes. To be able to protect our nation from its enemies, external and internal. And so, again, there's tension because people kind of want to, there's obviously lots of talk about reducing the power of government because all they've seen is bad. And what Trump is clearly working through is how do you use the power of government for the good?
Yes, I think that, and look, the founding fathers saw under the Articles of Confederacy, originally that preceded the Constitution, the chaos in the states. Most states limited the power of the governor exactly because they feared central authority, and so the states were themselves just chaotic. It was just a chaotic mess. So when it came to pulling together the Constitution, they understood the importance. The trade-offs, but the importance of a strong executive, including as commander-in-chief, as we well know, in terms of, the war didn't end in 1787. So that's another element of it as well.
Well, Trump is obviously thinking through what are the tools, the mechanisms that he could use to actually be able to defend the American people. So this week, he made a very interesting proposal. On one level, it might seem a little bit arcane, but it's actually very provocative. And that is his new proposal that when he becomes president, he wants to reestablish the power of the president of the United States to impound funds which have been authorized and appropriated by the Congress. So what's the background and what's the significance of this?
Yes, it's very important. It's very important in the history of the United States. It's an important power of the executive to balance out with the power of the purse that the Congress has. That's one way of thinking about it. Certainly, the way it's been discussed. Impoundment is the power of the president to impound funds. If legislation is passed, if money is being dispersed into areas that are destructive or counterproductive or a waste, the president has had the power to impound funds going back to Thomas Jefferson. That was the first time it was used. It wasn't illegal before that. It was the first time it was used, impoundment. And it existed up until 1974, where in the middle of the Watergate crisis and the assault on the institution of the presidency as well, the Congress passed the Impoundment Act of 1974, which did away with that executive power. It was never tested by the U.S. Supreme Court. Gerald Ford, who never did much of anything anyway, didn't test a lower court decision, and so it stood since then. And President Trump is saying, no, look, this is critical. This is critical. The executive, I as president, need this power. It's going to increase the power of the presidency and collaboration with the Congress. Congress is going to have to collaborate with the president of the United States in passing legislation and shaping legislation, because they know the power of impoundment is out there, that the president can simply take money out of wasteful or destructive spending, what have you, and put it back into the general fund. It can go for Social Security. It can go for the Medicare fund, for example. People, this is of concern. As an example, it could go to the space program. I mean, in other words, you can the power of the EPA is not unlimited. You can impound funds. Reagan reduced the power of the EPA in terms of enforcement by their budget by 45%, not through impoundment, but by other means. But I'm just giving that as another example of what impoundment can do. And so you can imagine how President Trump plans to use this, and you should really listen to his remarks on this on Agenda 47 to get it firsthand. But as he put it, this is to cut waste, stop inflation, and crush the deep state. That's what he has in mind with impoundment.
He's not leaving a whole lot to the imagination. I mean, it seems to me that one obvious example of this, because President Trump has stood almost alone, certainly on the Republican side, in being outspoken against this insane war in Ukraine, making the point over and over and over again, this could get us into World War III. So it seems to me that this would be an example, especially given the fact that you have the majority of the Republicans are with the Democrats when it comes to financing this war in Ukraine. There's a small minority of Republicans who stand with President Trump. But the spending for Ukraine has been like an out of control freight train. So would this be an example of how he could use impoundment?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. He said for obvious reasons he wouldn't use it against the defense budget. You can understand in general why he would say that. But impoundment is a power that cuts across all of these different areas. And I would agree that's an area that he could use it in.
And I think he actually says in this particular Agenda 47 statement that he wants to use it against the warmongers and the deep state. So
that's right. That's right.
Which is important because, again, he does stand almost alone on some of these critical policies. He does not have the majority of Republicans never mind the Democrats, backing him in some of these crucial areas. And he himself made very, very clear that he would like to use impounded funds to protect Social Security, to protect Medicare. So when you read this, you see a very, very clear commitment to defend the people. Yes. And to cut down the power of the globalists, of the warmongers, and of the other lunatics as well.
Yeah. As you know, he also this week came out with another agenda 47, specifically on tariffs and phasing in a system of baseline tariffs, which he's referenced before, but he's even tougher on it this time, to protect manufacturing, protect the worker, reverse, our trade deficit and so on. And I think it's another example of this. I would remind people in this regard, this is one of these areas where Congress, ceded responsibility to the president. The Reciprocal Trade Act of 1934, he refers to it in the 47 video. That's from 1934. That was an FDR bill. So reciprocal tariffs, that's a power that the president now has. And I would remind everyone that President Trump has already used that. If you remember back in 2018, he implemented tariff on steel, a 25% on tariff on steel imports, and a 10% tariff on aluminum imports. Among other things, that saved the Hawesville, Ohio, Century Aluminum facility, the only high purity aluminum facility, not only in the United States, but in all of NATO. That was a direct result of executive order promulgated in March of 2018 by President Trump. So this is straightforward. This is the power of the executive in action. Impoundment increases that power and the power for negotiation and of reasonable negotiation. So this is the direction we want to move in. Unfortunately, I want to add, because I think it is important, it's a certain irony here, is the Hawesville, Ohio aluminum plant, Century Aluminum plant, was closed down in June of last year. It was closed down, idled. It hasn't closed down completely, but it's been idled since June of last year because of the high prices of energy, brought to us by the Biden collective, by the Avatar, both in terms through the sanctions and then, of course, the attempts to scuttle energy production, sane baseload power production. So it's time to bring a president into the White House that could actually fill the shoes of the presidency, as Washington, Lincoln, and others did today. We've got to match energy with tariff policy and with family growth and other areas, and with national credit to get it done. This is what President Trump can do. And it's exciting to see him putting it forward in this kind of decisive fashion for the American people to work through.
Well, I really encourage people to go both to the LaRouche PAC website, where we have a whole page devoted to the implications of Agenda 47, and to go to Donald Trump's campaign website, because he is outlining and unfolding really a renewed understanding of the power of the US presidency. And I think this has been a very, very important discussion, because it is the case that people are so gun shy about government. They want limited government. They want to cut things down to size and so on. It isn't the issue of the government. It's the issue of who is wielding the government. Do you have a president who is committed to the Constitution and the general welfare? Or do you have a general counsel who is just administering things on behalf of the enemies of this nation? And that's really what the upcoming election is going to be all about. So thank you, Brian, again.
It's up to the American people to organize, to speak out, to work to get Trump back in the White House.
And to really master these policies themselves.
Yes.
Because as we've stressed in other podcasts and in other venues, the critical question for 2024 is, are we going to reach new layers? Are we going to reach beyond the already committed Trump supporters and outflank and surprise anything and everything the enemy throws at us by reaching into new layers and giving them restoring an understanding and a vision of what a truly American economy and a truly American presidency is actually all about? So Donald Trump has certainly given us a lot of material to work through those ideas, and we look forward to continuing the discussion. So thank you, Brian.
Good. See you next time.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we'll be talking about another Agenda 47 proposal very soon. Thank you.